Are we already on YouTube?
Yeah, now we are live on YouTube.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Today we're going to talk to Elisa Melo. And for just to start, I wanted her to introduce herself. Is it okay, Elisa?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for the invite. Thank you for having me. My name is Elisa. I am 26, turning 27 in 3 days. I am a lawyer and I come from São Luís, Maranhão, born and raised. I lived there up until 2018. I was working as a lawyer for the government. And then I was in the process of applying for master's degrees abroad. I wanted to study international human rights law, which was something that I was already interested during my last year of law school. I had one class called human rights and I didn't even know what was it about. And I fell in love doing it. And then I wrote my bachelor's thesis on the topic. There's this prison complex in my state, Maranhão, which is called Pedrinhas. I don't know if you heard of it, but back when I was studying law, 2013, 2014, 15, there was severe human rights violations there. A lot of rebellions and killings. And then I started to research a little bit about the human rights there, the violations of human rights there, and what was the Brazilian government doing about it. And in the process of researching and writing about it, I fell in love with the topic. So then I applied for several master's degrees in Europe. I knew that's where I wanted to come. And I got accepted in a few, but we know it's very expensive to come here, especially with the euro being so expensive. So I couldn't go to my first option, but I ended up going to a great place and I was offered a scholarship, half a scholarship. It didn't pay for everything, but it paid half. And I did a lot of things to raise money, the rest of the money that I needed. And eventually I was able to come. So I've been here in Europe since 2018. I have also been moving a lot. I lived the first year in Germany because that was the first year of the masters. That's when you have classes and you have to be there every day. But after that, second year is for academic production. So to write papers and to write my thesis, which I am writing right now. I'm almost finishing. So from last semester, I spent in Kosovo because I was selected for an internship with the United Nations Women Office, which was my dream internship. And I was so excited to go. So I stayed there 5 months. And last year I moved again to Switzerland because I got a job with the International Committee of the Red Cross. So the ICRC, that's what we call. Both working with women, peace and security issues. That means wars, armed conflicts, and gender issues together. In the UN, because Kosovo had gone through a war in 1998 and 1999. So we say in the legal aspect of it, we say that the country is going through a transitional justice process. That's the process of rebuilding a country after a war. And during this war, 20,000 women were raped because they used that as a weapon of genocide, as a way to say, you're no longer part of this community. So when women were raped there, they couldn't be integrated in society anymore. They were excluded. And for 20 years, they were silent. They were stigmatized. Nobody wanted to marry them. Nobody wanted to employ them. And then the UN started its mission in Kosovo. And that's the work that I did there with these women. And obviously, because of COVID-19, a lot of COVID, like domestic violence during the pandemic, which we know everywhere is increasing. If you're a woman, situation of domestic violence and you were trapped in the house with your abuser, then there's an increase in the number of cases. So the UN was doing a lot of work with these women. And then I got this job here, which is more or less the same. There I'm working post-conflict, and here with the Red Cross, we are working during conflict. And in my department, we address sexual violence. So women, they're victims of sexual violence during wars. That's pretty much what I've been doing.
That's incredible. I forgot to unmute it. So while we're talking, if anyone has a question or something like that, you can unmute your microphone and then you can ask Elisa, or you can type down on the chat that we can read here if you're shy. But okay, I know you have like an incredible job. Really honored to talk to you. That's incredible. But before we start to talk more about your internship, I wanted to know more about this country because it's not so common for us to know it. So how is that like Kosovo? Is that how we?
Yeah.
I know that is
sorry.
Near Sofia, something like that, right?
Near Bulgaria. It's called the Balkans region. So it's the ex-Yugoslavia. I'm sure you heard of that. Okay, so up until the 90s, there was just one Soviet communist bloc called Yugoslavia. And after the war, the Balkans War, during the 1990s, they all disintegrated into several little countries. That's why we don't hear often about them. I had never heard of Kosovo until I moved to Germany. And I had 3 colleagues in my class from Kosovo. And I was like, I'm sorry, where? It's like Kosovo. And I was like, oh, okay, because Brazil does not recognize Kosovo as a country. Part of the world still says Kosovo is part of Serbia, so that's like a conflict. And our diplomacy in Brazil does not recognize as a country. That's why we don't hear about it. But once I was in Germany and I met a lot of them, because during the war, they all like fled to different countries. They are refugees all around the world. So just like us Brazilians, you're going to find Brazilians everywhere. You also find Albanians. They identify themselves as Albanians because they're right next to Albania, and that's the nationality that they own. They're not like they are Albanians from Kosovo, you know. So you see Albanians everywhere in the world as well. So it's very interesting. And when I was looking for internships with the UN, they are very hard to get. So I didn't choose a lot. Like everything that was open, I was just applying. And you apply to several ones before you even get an interview. I think I applied something around 15, 20, and to each one you have to send a different application, different letter. And like your CV is basically the same, but like always a different letter specifically to that vacancy. So like it was very hard to get. And they invited me for an interview. I was like, I cannot believe, because even getting an interview, it's so hard with the UN, and they don't pay. Like those are unpaid internships, and they are so hard to get, because once you put the UN in your resume, everything changes. Like finding a job, it's much easier. It's still competitive. It's a very competitive field. It's very big in Europe. Like we barely hear about it, like in Brazil, human rights as a career. So when I told like my family or some friends that I was coming to Europe to study human rights, they're like, oh, you're gonna be poor. What are you gonna do there? And like in Europe, it's a whole new world, especially here in Switzerland, where I am now, in Geneva. So many organizations, not just the Red Cross and not just the UN, but around 200 NGOs. So it is a big field. And a lot of people that study law or international politics, international relations, go to that field. And then I always say I didn't choose Kosovo. Kosovo chose me, because they invited me for the interview. I did the interview. I didn't hear back for 2 weeks. I felt like, oh my God, it's not going to happen. And then they invited me and I was like, yes, let's go. And I just like closed my eyes and went. It could have gone both ways. It was very hard because I was only there for 2 weeks when lockdown started, pandemic started, and basically my whole internship was from home. But it was very much like Brazil. People are so open, so friendly. My bosses, everybody that worked with me every day, they're like texting me, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Are you okay? Like my neighbors, they knew I was alone. So like, they're like, oh, we cooked some dinner. Do you want food? It was very open, like very open people. It felt a little bit like Brazil. Also had a lot of the same issues that we have in Brazil, with like in the city. We know what issues, like no violence, but all the others I could find there. So for me, when I was there, it was like feels like Brazil was so much easier to adapt than it was for me when I went to Germany, because Germany is so correct, it's so clean, it's so organized, but people are so cold, so distant, so rude. So yeah, it was like both worlds. From Brazil to Germany was a big shock, and from Germany to Kosovo, I think even a bigger one. Yeah.
And you started to talk something that I was about to ask you, because I wanted to know, like, how did you feel being a woman there? And you just told us that you were treated really amazing and everything else, but did you feel something different? Because as you told us, this country has like a historic about raping women.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you can go on.
Okay. Kosovo is a Muslim country, so that's what I was worried about before going. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to a Muslim country. I've never lived in a Muslim country before. I've seen Ukloni. We all have seen it, and very interesting about it. I wanted to hear more, but I never had experience. So I was definitely very worried when I moved. But at the same time, because they had such a bad history and a recent violent history, the country, it's called Newborn. Like the city is called Pristina. That's the capital where I lived. It's called Newborn because it's the youngest city in Europe. They only became a country in 2008, so another day, like very recent. And a lot of people, especially older people, died during the war, and that means that the country is very young. I think, if I'm not mistaken, 80% of the population, 70%, something like that, is below 35. So they're very young, very, very young. And the country is a mix between religion and modern. You see like all the young kids wearing modern clothes from Zara. They wear like Vans shoes, and they love brands, and they dress just like any other teenager. And you see the older women wearing the whole clothes, the jihab, I don't know if that's the word for it, like the burqa, all the clothes. So that's a contrast there. As a woman, like walking by myself, I would get like catcalled a lot. People, like men, saying crap to you, just like it happens in Brazil. But it was still very safe. I was never like robbed, never really in any dangerous situation. It was actually very peaceful country. As a woman, the same thing that happens in Brazil and in many other places. It's annoying, but I never felt like that my safety was at risk. I even took like taxis by myself, which is something that I don't like to do in Brazil. I do it like I call an Uber, but we're always like sending our location to a friend and calling a friend or calling your mom, like I'm gonna be home soon, so they can hear that somebody is waiting for you. Like in Kosovo, I took taxis all the time. I felt safer. It wasn't as peaceful as in Germany for a woman. I was never catcalled there. But it wasn't as dangerous as Brazil. It was in the middle, and I think a pleasant surprise because the religion was never an issue. Actually, the younger people there, they are always like at bars and nightclubs, and like obviously before everything closed, but they love to go out and to talk and to, unemployment is very high there too, so they don't work and then they have a lot of time, and they're always like drinking coffee, socializing. Very young country and very nice place to be. I had a good experience. Yeah.
That's amazing. And does anyone has any questions there? Because I'm here, I'm going to start to make many of them. Okay. So as you felt a little bit being a woman there, is it still a little different from being a native woman, or do you feel like it was like the same?
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Right.
Because like now I'm transitioning, so like I have my hair curly now, which I never did for like my whole life, but it just like screams foreign when people see you, especially with the hair. And I know I look Latina, and people look at me like, and I don't speak Albanian, which is the language. I would only speak in English, and they're like, immediately, where are you from? Immediately, the first thing, especially men. Anywhere, if I was like buying, even like at the supermarket or buying water, anywhere, where are you from? Where are you from? Where are you from? But it's a curiosity. They were very curious about foreign people being there, because it's a very closed country. Since only half of the countries in the world recognize Kosovo as a country, they have visa issues. They cannot leave I think they can only visit 4 or 5 countries without a visa, and they need a visa to go anywhere. So they don't travel a lot, and people don't travel a lot there. It's a very closed country, so it's very easy to recognize when people are foreign, and they get very curious, like, how did you end up here? What are you doing here? Are you working here? Where are you from? Every day. And I would say like Brazil, and they're like, Brazil, football, World Cup, like soccer, Ronaldinho, Neymar. Like they know us for the football, and surprise, surprise, for the soap opera O Clone. They'll be like, O Clone, Jade, because they showed right after the war. They told me like they showed the soap opera right after the war, when people started to come back, like, because I think this soap opera is from 2002, and the war ended in 1999, and the country was like a little in the dark for a few years, and then I think around 2003, 2004, they showed O Clone in Portuguese with subtitles in Albanian there, and like it was one of the very few things on TV, so the whole families would come together to watch, and they loved, and they asked me, is it true that like people live on the beach every day? Like, is it just like and it was more than 10 years ago, but they remember because of the context, like post-war. And they always tell me, like, whenever I met people from work, they're like, oh, when I was 10, we had just came back like after the war, and then me, my mom, and my siblings, we watched the clone every day. So that was very interesting. I had no idea. Yeah, everybody that I knew that was my age, like I am 26, told me a story of like surviving the war, escaping the war, losing some family in the war. So this is something very, very, very strong in their lives, as it should be. Yeah.
Yes, like you told us that it was in 1998 and 1999, so it was something that it's like 20 years in the past. So how was to work with these women there? Like, how was exactly your work?
Okay, so the UN has a support role, like the NGOs, as we call in Brazil, ONGs. They are the ones working face to face with the women, and the UN is behind, giving like money, support, making like getting fundraising, more donors, supporters, and like co-writing the projects. We do more the desk work behind because of the name, right? Say like I am an NGO doing this work with women, and I am supported by the UN. So that gives like a whole new level. And the UN has several partnerships with different countries. So we worked a lot with the embassies, the embassy of the UK, the embassy of Switzerland, the embassy of Norway, Sweden, all these like rich countries they would in Europe, even though they are not in the European Union, they would like donate a lot of money. And then we would like write the projects. Let's say I worked closely with shelters, for instance, women's shelters. During the pandemic, we're like, okay, we gotta identify who are these women. We got to come up with creative ways to get them out of the house when they're suffering domestic violence, because if the guy is there all the time, how are they going to be able to call for help? So we create systems with, for instance, a code word, a safe word, and then we put it on TV, on the radio. Like we did a lot of it, and then women knew that if they came to the pharmacy or to the supermarket and told somebody this word, they had to call the police because they were trying to flee domestic violence. And then they would be referred to women's shelters, and the UN was responsible for also donating a lot of supplies, not only masks and hand sanitizers, but like bedding, clothing, school supplies for the kids so they could keep up with online school. So we had these projects to provide them with I think tablets and laptops as well, and several other projects. So a lot of my work, actually 90% of my work, was redirect to COVID-19 because that's the context that we are living right now. But it was very interesting to see like domestic violence, for instance, they say, oh, it only happens like a few cases a year. Feminicide, only like 2-3 deaths a year. And that's very different from Brazil, because we see that every hour. But it is a small country. But actually what happens is the stigma is so strong on women that have been beaten, abused, that they don't report, they don't come forward, they stay silent for years and years and years. They suffer in silence. So the UN's work is to identify who are these women and how can we reach to them, especially when we're talking about rural women in communities, and Roma women, which is what we call gypsy, Egyptian women, Ashkali women, which is like the minority group, and Serbian women, because in the borders with Serbia, it's still Kosovo, but a lot of them, for instance, don't speak Albanian. They only speak Serbian, because that's very common in Europe. So they are the minority, and if they don't speak the language, they don't have access to information. So there was like a big challenge. How can we access these women? They're like isolated there, don't speak the language, don't have a place to live, or they are in traditional communities with no electricity or no internet, no TV. So how do we reach these women? That was like, it still is like the focus of the work with the UN Women does, and not alone, but also in partnership with, for instance, UNHCR, which is the Agency for Refugees. In Brazil, it's called ACNUR, it's the UN Agency for Refugees, or IOM, the International Organization for Migration, or UNICEF, that works with kids. So they all work together in an integrated way to provide assistance for these people. And a lot of diplomatic work goes behind this. So to get the money, to get the funding from the countries, because the UN is made by countries. So if the country doesn't donate, the UN itself doesn't have a lot of money. So it needs donations from other countries. So diplomacy, fundraising, supporting NGOs, working with women on ground, identifying these women, campaigns, online campaigns, radio campaigns. Before we used to do a lot of events like street, but now everything has to be moved to digital platforms. But yeah, that's the work.
Andressa just raised her hand. I don't know if she has some question.
Don't speak. You can hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I am Andressa.
No.
Sorry.
Okay, just a little louder, please.
Okay. So I don't speak English very well, but I think if you don't understand me, I can write. Okay.
Okay.
So I can talk in here. For you, thank you for the opportunity and your inspiration. What do you think is the most important to focus for can want to promote global changes? And if you, what do you say? What are other for the cause? No. So if feminists or climate change, what do you think the most important?
Well, this is a very important and very difficult question. I think that no change comes by itself. When I was in Brazil and I volunteered for 1 year at the Human Rights Committee of the Bar Association, so at the OAB, now OAB, I volunteered there for 1 year so I could get like experience to go to my master's, because you don't just like study this if you don't have some experience in the field. And then we did a lot of work at the community. So I come from Maranhão, and that's a very poor state with a lot of demands on every aspect that you imagine. So I worked domestic violence, but I also worked with like land dispute from indigenous communities. And I thought, oh my God, just working from here, I'm never going to be able to change anything. I need to go to Geneva. I need to go to the headquarters where the money is, where the law is being made. That's what I thought. Now that I'm here in Europe for almost 2 years now, I believe that one cannot function without the other. So in order to promote global changes, we need both. We need the policies, the laws, the money, the diplomacy that comes from here, from New York, from Washington, D.C., from Geneva, from London, from all the big cities where the big names, where the big money is. And we need a strong community work. We need people on ground working, talking, helping people on ground. We cannot do one without the other. You cannot do a good groundwork if you don't have the money and the support coming from above. And you cannot change anything if you're just working here, writing laws and say, now I passed this law, I passed this resolution, I passed this treaty, everybody's gonna sign and the world's gonna change. No, we need a combination. So to see an actual change and actual evolution, we need that everybody works together in an integrated way so that headquarters and field workers both support each other. And I know it's very technical what I'm saying, like those are the terms that we use every day, but in a nutshell, people with the money supporting people working on ground, and people on ground being able to count with people on money to be like and say, hey, Bolsonaro, like, hey, Donald Trump, hey, you know, like, you stupid people, there are some international laws that you need to comply with. So yeah, we need both. We need people on ground and we need people up there.
That's so true. Anyone has another question to Elisa? So, okay, so I'm gonna ask you something about it as well. So how was it for you to be thinking about your personal skills? How was the most challenging thing for you while you were working in UN?
I think at first, the most difficult thing for me was the language barrier, for sure, because I was the only international person there. They were all Albanians, so naturally they will only speak in Albanian with each other, and I was just like, what am I even doing here? I felt like invisible, and that's a very bad feeling when you feel like you don't know what you're doing there, especially because I knew that I study a lot, I prepare a lot, and I had a lot to contribute, but I felt that maybe they didn't really want me there at first. So that was a bad feeling. And then I talked to the team about it, at least, like, not everybody, but like the people we worked in the same room, the same space. And I said, listen, I want to be integrated with the team. I want to learn about the work that you're doing. So I need you to speak in English with me. Like I asked, and it was good because we were at a bar. And then after a few beers, everybody was just like, yeah, sure, we're going to do it. But then Monday came and they mostly spoke Albanian. So that was hard. But then we moved to online working. And then when we had meetings and all, they had to speak English with me because I don't speak Albanian. And they knew that because I applied and I said only English for me, or Portuguese or French, because I speak a little bit French. And they took me anyway, so they knew that I didn't speak the language. So that was a barrier at first, the language barrier for sure. Once we were like working online and doing like weekly meetings online, and they were giving me more stuff to do, and I needed to write more, and I have bye Andressa. I have good writing skills. I am a good writer, and I think they started to trust me more. It just came like more easily. They would like give me more tasks, give me more things to write, and give me positive feedback, or tell me like how could I do things differently, where could I change. So that was very good. After that, things were good. And since it was a very crazy situation that we're going through right now, they told me like, we wish you could stay longer. They want me to stay with them until the end of the year, because we know this is not a typical situation, and usually our interns, they do a lot more. In UN internship, it's unpaid, and people mostly do it for obviously the experience, but the networking, the people you meet, and the context that you made is a very important part. And I didn't have that because of the quarantine, but I guess, cute cat. But everybody in the world is struggling, so I don't feel like, oh my God, my life is over, because, I did the best of the situation with the reality that I was going through. And I think overall was a good experience. More limited in comparison to what it could have been, but this is 2020. It is a crazy time.
Tell me about it. 2020. It has been like 7 years in 1 year.
It's insane. I can't believe
Yeah.
it's August, like already. It feels like a long time has passed, but at the same time, not. I don't know. I can't explain. It's just weird.
Yeah, the world is changing. I want to ask you like 2 different questions, but firstly, when did you start your internship at UN, and what was the most challenging moment there?
I started on the 1st or the 2nd of March, early March, and this year, and I just finished now at 31st of July, 15 days ago. So
but it was like you were already at Europe?
Yes, because I'm doing my master's in Germany. So I was already, actually I went to Brazil for Christmas, and I stayed there in January, and then in February I came back, and I was in Germany because I had to move out of my apartment there, and I had to keep get everything out and get the place clean and do all the bureaucracy from if you're an immigrant, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do when you move in and out of the country, especially with, I don't have European passport, so everything is 2 times more complicated for me. But yeah, I came back in February, and then I came, my family here, they drove 10 hours to pick me up in Germany from Switzerland, and we're with all my boxes, my luggage, my moving, and then we drove back to Switzerland, and I left everything downstairs, all my shit. Oh, sorry. And then I just got 2 luggages and flew to Kosovo from here. It's a 2-hour flight. It's not bad. So I stayed 5 months. And what was the second question that you had?
What was the most challenging moment there?
Definitely the quarantine. Oh my God, I did not expect that. I was so excited because it was my first real apartment. In Germany, I lived in a student dorm. It was 17 square meters, 17, not 70, 17. It was a room with a bathroom and a tiny, tiny kitchen. And it was weird coming from a big house in Brazil and a lot of people, my whole family, to live by myself in a cell. And I was I felt like in a prison at first. I was oh my God, I understand how Lula must be feeling right now, because it was not cute being trapped to that in Germany. But I got used to it after a while, and I moved out, and I was in Kosovo, and it was my first big apartment because Kosovo is super cheap. What I paid in Germany for this room, it was the same amount that I paid for a whole apartment. So I think 60 meters with a living room and a big bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, hall. And I was so excited to be there. And I was I love my new place. I don't even want to go out. And then I was quarantined there. So that was very, that was very complicated. That was definitely because Kosovo is so alive and people love to be out. They go out every night. If you go out Tuesday night, the city is full, and then it was so weird being trapped at home, and everybody was desperate to leave. And now in June, they open everything again. And the city was insanely packed. So many people everywhere. And then I also went out a little bit with masks and stuff, but I needed to enjoy a little bit of the country before I left. I took a trip to another city called Prizren, historical city, very beautiful. And then I went to Albania, to the beach as well, in the south of Albania, close to Greece. So beautiful. It was totally worth it. Yep.
And how is the COVID-19 situation there nowadays?
At first, when they did the lockdown, 6 weeks, they did everything right, and the numbers were so low. I think we were having 5 new cases a day, 6 new cases a day in the whole country, very well controlled. And for March, April, and May, 3 months, only 30 deaths, only 30 people died. So very controlled. And they got so excited that everything was so controlled that 1st of June, they opened everything. They didn't say you need to wear a mask. They didn't say social distance. They were like back to normal. And now the cases are like every day, 200 new cases, 300 new cases. Now it's out of control. And that's why Switzerland put Kosovo in this blacklist. And since I came from Kosovo, I'm quarantined. I'm quarantined here for 10 days. Yeah, because Kosovo was doing so well and then they didn't.
Okay. And I want to ask you like a whole different question now. I was talking with my dad that we were at this call, and he raised a good question. He says that sometimes when people want to donate something for NGOs, like I don't know, regular NGOs, local NGOs, national, international NGOs, we have so much bureaucracy doing that. Like we have to give a lot of documents, registration numbers, and information, and addresses, and a lot of things, and that makes it harder to a lot of people donate. I don't know if that happens at Red Cross. I don't know if that's correct. But what's your opinion about it, and what do you think that NGOs can make to make it easier, this process for people to donate for them?
That's a good question. I don't really know a lot about the fundraising aspect of it. I know that the big ones, they had to be registered when like countries are donating a lot of money or private companies are donating a lot of money. They have to be registered because of legal reasons, you know, because both parts have to declare taxes and stuff. When it's small donations, I believe that some, like the Red Cross, you can make an anonymous donation. You can just donate. But it will have to be for your local Red Cross. So the one in your city or in your state, like I think the one in São Paulo, for instance. I know I could do it like when I lived in São Luís, there was a small one there and you can donate. But I guess, and I'm just guessing here, I don't have experience with that the smaller NGOs, they do that because they need to declare like all the money that they got just to make sure that it's legit, they're not using it to launder money and stuff. So I guess it's for their own protection as well and for their own legal safety, so they don't get like investigated, prosecuted. I am guessing as like a lawyer, that's my hint, that's what I would say. And I think it's also a way for you to be safe, because when it comes the time to declare your taxes, imposto de renda, you have to say like, what did you do with your money, right? So if it's registered, then you can prove that whatever amount you donated, you actually donated. You're not hiding abroad, you're not, doing illegal activities with that. I believe that's the main reason why. I don't have an opinion if that's good or bad for both. I really don't. So.
Thanks.
No problem.
Someone have any questions? No?
Can you have another one?
Shoot.
I wanted to know more about how you think, how's your perspective? Because in Brazil we have a different thought. Every country has a different thought about human rights.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's that different from Brazil culture to the other ones, like German culture or culture, thinking about the women's rights.
So different. Oh my God. And I had no idea how different it would be until I got here. Because as I mentioned before, it is a career here. It is like a very respected field. When you say, oh, I'm doing like human rights law, everybody's like, oh my God, it's like saying I'm a doctor in Brazil. It's very respected. And in Brazil, when I say like, oh, I really like human rights, and people be like, feminazi, and we know, like, oh, you're exaggerating. Even I was so frustrated because I worked in Brazil as a lawyer for 2 years, and I was in so many different lawyers, like WhatsApp groups, and I tried to engage myself in events for like young lawyers, and it was so frustrating for me. The first event that I went, held by the OAB, the Bar Association, and it was like a whole table with 11 men. They didn't even have one woman there like representing. I was so frustrated when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, a lot needs to change. A lot needs to change everywhere, but a lot still needs to change. And then when I came to Europe, especially Germany, we know have this awful history, very heavy history, and they are trying to compensate every day. I think it's not my favorite place on earth. I didn't like fell in love. I didn't say, oh my God, that's where I want to live forever. It was just a very good place. I could recognize like what was good and what was bad about it. And if you put in the balance, it is like a good place to live. And they try to make it better after the bad that they made to the world. And they are very aware of a lot of human rights issues. And they are very progressive. They are very liberal. They are very into... They like to openly discuss feminism, racism, human rights, homophobia, xenophobia. Like my university had so many events. And like any time that I went to the bathroom, like stickers and posters all over the walls, like, I don't believe in a feminist that is not anti-racist, and like a lot of things that I had never like discussed about it. And I had studied a little, but I'm still not like an expert on the topic. I'm still learning every day, of course. But I was pleasantly surprised with how many open-minded people I met, and everybody that I met, even people who didn't know a lot about politics. I'm very into politics. Even people that don't know a lot, is like, I don't know a lot of politics, but if I was to vote, or if I am to vote, I lean towards the left. Like, they're very progressive, not a lot of conservative, even though like the current party, like Angela Merkel, she is center right, she's more right, but being right does not excuse you from guaranteeing civil rights and human rights. Those are different things. You can be left or right, but human rights, they are for everyone. They are human rights. And that perspective that I got from Germany was so important for me. Before working at the UN, I did one internship in Germany as well, at the Nuremberg trials, the place that they tried the Nazis after the war, and the place where they created international criminal law wasn't a thing. Every country had their own penal system, their own criminal code. And then there in Nuremberg, after the Second World War, they created an international criminal law. They created the concepts of genocide, war crime, crimes against humanity. And I worked there, and it was so insane, the experience, because up there was a museum of the Holocaust museum, and then you'd see, and the Nuremberg trials place, like the room that where the Nazis were trialed, and a lot of them were sentenced to death. It was just like a very heavy place, and a very I don't know, like the energy of the place was not easy. Like a lot of like very, very hard things happen there, but I could see that how serious they take the fact that it's still there and it's very preserved, and it's not just like a dying museum. It's a very active place, and they respect the history that they did, and they try to make it better today. So Germany was a very pleasant surprise in that aspect. But Europe in general, if you want to work with human rights, that's the best place. It's not the US, it's not any other place, it's here. Because the US, it's extremely capitalist, and it's about money. It's money. And here, where are the policies and the diplomacy, the real diplomacy, it's really made. If you want to really work with human rights and get your hands dirty, you come to Geneva. That's the place. Yeah.
I wish everyone could hear you saying that about human rights. It's not the same as politics.
It's different.
Yeah.
Civil rights, we are all born with it. Just by being human, we are born with it. So it doesn't matter who you voted for. Like I could only say, I can excuse you being right. I don't want to like get into Brazilian politics right now because we know it's different debate, but I can excuse my friends being right, just not far right as we have right now, but like being right, as long as you know that these rights, those are fundamental guarantees. Those are for everyone. It doesn't matter, oh, because, you know, he is a criminal and he's in jail. Does not mean that he doesn't have human right to, you know, exist in a humanly way with some dignity. Yeah, it's a very complex debate. But
Unfortunately, Brazil, sometimes justice is not as fair as it should be. So of course they need to.
a lot of places. You have to see what's happening in the US right now. This is a racist system that, I mean, they had apartheid the other day. So like what's happening, it has always happened. It's just like more advertised now. It's more in the media now. You discuss it more. But I think that we need to be careful to not let these debates be held only by rich countries, rich people, white people in rich countries. So that's a lot of, for instance, where I'm working now, they always say, I'm only there like 2 weeks, I'm being trained still, but I've had already 2 meetings on that topic. And they are like, we acknowledge that we are an organization that is mainly white and mainly Europeans. And we want to hire more people from different backgrounds. We want to bring people from Africa, from the Americas, you know, from Asia. We want to hear those voices, those experiences, and we want their experience to be part of the policies and the international agreements that we make. Because if they are only here, you know, oh, I read about racism, I've seen a movie, but you never experienced. So it's different. Obviously, being a woman is challenging, but being a woman in Brazil is different than being a woman in Africa, and it's different than being a woman in Germany. Those are 3 completely different experiences, completely different. Yeah.
I think Eduardo raised his hand.
I have a question regarding slavery. I don't know what you can tell us about that. And some years ago, we have I had an opportunity to watch a journalist talking about his book on slavery at Brazil. He interviewed a woman from federal police here in Brazil that does a work regarding that. And I don't know, what's your opinion about slavery at Brazil, and what's the level of slavery at Brazil, and what's the main challenge regarding that in Europe as well, and in your work, maybe, I don't know.
Well, the problem with slavery, which happened for 3 centuries, I think, in Brazil, and was an awful time. The problem is that it did not end when it ended officially. So all the discussions that we're having today regarding Black Lives Matter and fascist movements and contemporary races, they are all a legacy from those times, definitely. And I think the problem in Brazil is that we don't address it enough. I see a lot of people who are against social workers, social working and benefits, welfare benefits like Bolsa Familia and racial quotas from NA and universities and public context and stuff. People say, oh, you know, that just aggravates racism. I disagree. I think they are very important because slavery happened for a very long time. And after that, it just went unnoticed. It was like from one day to the next, it ended, and no public policies were made in Brazil from 1888 until 2002. That's when the first racial and socioeconomic quotas emerged. And the thing in Brazil is this discourse, this thing that people say, there's no racism in Brazil. That's the worst thing. We all grew up listening to that. I listened to that in school, like, oh my God, there's no racism in Brazil. Like, look how bad things are in the US or in South Africa with apartheid. But we never looked at ourselves. And I went to a private school in São Luís. In Maranhão, as a state, was 70% of the population is Black. And in my private school, out of 40 colleagues, we had 1-2 Black kids. So this is a legacy from slavery because it did not end in 1888. It still goes on today. If you see every middle class house that has a maid, if you take a look at those domestic workers, as we call, color or ethnicity, you're gonna see that they happen to be Black. So it didn't change, because if you're telling me that they are getting paid minimum wage, sometimes they're not even allowed to eat in the house, or sometimes they don't get, proper paid, the labor rights, paid vacations, or 13th salary and stuff. I don't think that slavery has ended. It just became a modern style of it, and we all have like normalized that. Like, it's not normal if you're a family like in Rio, living in Leblon, for instance, and making 20, 30, 40,000 a month, and you have somebody who's working for you all day, every day, from Monday to Saturday, and she's getting paid 1,000 reais. I don't think it's normal. It's modern slavery. But I have a lot of like controversial opinions, and it's really gonna depend on like your point of view. But what I can tell you for sure, from a human rights perspective, is that all the racism that we see today in society, and the lack of Black people occupying, spaces, you don't see them as CEOs of big companies, you don't see them working big jobs, you don't see them when you're traveling abroad on the plane, you see white. This is all a reflex of slavery and the deep impact that it has had in Brazil, and it still does, because I'm here only 2 years, but I've never met anyone in Europe who told me like I grew up with a maid. Never. This is not a thing. People don't, like, they do their own domestic work, it's just your mess, you clean. It's a mentality. Yeah. Also a very complicated topic.
Nice. We pass 1 hour. First, yeah, it's so fast. First, sorry to keep quiet, because I'm training my English and I train my eyes, and because this only I'm listen you. And first of all, Leticia apologized to you because now she traveling from.
Yeah, she told me. Yeah, Croatia, back to the UK. Yeah.
And second, I would like to thank you so much for accepting this invite and share your knowledge with us. It's so nice for me, because work with politics in Brazil in a parliament, and I'm formed in international relationship, and it's so interesting with me, and learn and understand a little bit more about what you work and what you make in your job. It's so exciting for me. And
thank you.
Now we need to finish this meeting, because I see your sky. It's
already dark, right?
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Now it's
night
now it's
now.
10. It's 10 here, but
10.
it's fine. I'm quarantined and I have nowhere to go.
It's 10 o'clock now
Yeah.
in there. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. After we share the link, the YouTube link with you, and we will share for other people who don't want to, can't participate. But thank you so much, and thank you, Gabriela, for saving me, and Eduardo for participating a lot. And
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for this invitation. I just want to express before I go that I don't have a European passport. I don't come from family who has a lot of money. The only thing that brought me here was learning English. So that's very important. Keep studying, keep learning English. study as much as you can. And doesn't matter what you study, doesn't have to be law. Whatever you do, just do with passion, do the best you can, and then get some work experience and apply for masters, apply for scholarships, and come. And then if you're really good at something, the doors will open for you. It's always empowering for me to see other women. So whenever people ask me, like, how did you do? What are you doing? How did you get there? I love, like, if I can help one person, for me is a pleasure, because I know I had a lot of help to come here. I would like look for people like Brazilians in Switzerland, Brazilians in Germany, like, oh my God, can you give me any tips? Like, how can you help me? So if I can help back, I gladly, and I'm gonna leave my Instagram here. It's Elisa_Melo. So you can follow me, send me a message. If you need anything, just don't hesitate to reach out. And yeah, have a nice one. Stay safe in Brazil.
Nice. And if you say second time, are you buy my flight? the kidding.
In a normal world, I was gonna go to Brazil tomorrow to spend my birthday with my family. So like before I start this call, I was like crying for an hour, and then I was like, okay, now it's time to to talk. So like, it's not easy. It's not like all happy moments and, you know, my life is perfect because I moved. It's a decision that you make, and you know you're gonna give up a lot of things, but at the end of the day, if that's your dream, it's worth it. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you. And
Thank
bye-bye.
you, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Pleasure.